Imagine being able to push open the door of a house that remains sealed for almost 2,000 years. On the other side, an entire world waiting to be rediscovered. Walls painted in colors that defy time, kitchen utensils still on the countertop, dog paw prints on the stone floor, and even the remains of a meal that was never finished. This is not fiction, this is Pompeii. And what you are about to see is a recreation based on historical records and archaeological findings, simulated with the aid of artificial intelligence to bring this video to life. It is a reconstruction of the environments, customs, and routines of those people based on decades of research and excavations. If this type of content sparks your curiosity, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to follow the next episodes of this series that reconstructs the past with technology. Pompeii was a prosperous city located in the Campania region, in the south of the Italian peninsula, about 25 kilometers south of Naples. In the year 79 AD, in the time of Christ, approximately 25,000 people lived there in a community that brought together merchants, artisans, farmers, slaves, and members of the Roman elite. The city was strategically positioned near the Sarno River and the Bay of Naples, which guaranteed it access to maritime and land trade routes. Its inhabitants were mainly dedicated to agriculture, viticulture, and the trade of olive oil and the famous garum, a fermented fish sauce considered one of the most valued delicacies of the entire Roman Empire. When Vesuvius erupted on that fateful October day, the entire city was buried under approximately 6 meters of ash and pumice stone. Houses, temples, shops, streets, paintings, personal objects, and even human bodies were impressively preserved, creating what archaeologists consider the most complete snapshot of Roman life in the 1st century. It is from these remains that it becomes possible to reconstruct, albeit approximately, what it was like to live inside one of these residences. The typical house of a middle or upper-class Pompeian family was called a dome. Contrary to what one might imagine, these houses did not boast imposing facades facing the street. On the contrary, the exterior appearance was modest, built of brick and baked tile, with uniform walls and almost no windows. The openings were intentionally small or non-existent to protect the residents from noise, from the cold, since glass was an extreme rarity at the time, and above all from thieves. All the wealth and all the life happened inside. In some cases, the rooms facing the street were separated from the rest of the residence and rented as shops called tabernae. These commercial spaces opened directly onto the street without shop windows, and there operated artisan workshops, bakeries, dye works, or small businesses. There was also a side service entrance called a posticum, usually leading to an alley used by slaves and workers. Upon crossing the main door, the visitor entered a small corridor called a fis. It was at this point that one of the most curious details of Pompeian houses appeared. On the floor, a mosaic of welcome or warning. The most famous example is that of the tragic poet's house, where a mosaic depicted a dog accompanied by the inscription Cave Canem, meaning, beware of the dog. This detail reveals something fascinating. The Pompeians already lived with domestic animals inside their homes. Dogs were the most common, performing guard and companion functions. Archaeological discoveries show the existence of small-sized dogs, kept exclusively as companions and comparable in size to present-day small breeds. In addition to dogs, geese were kept by more modest families as noisy sentinels, capable of alerting to the presence of strangers. Chickens roamed the courtyards and inner gardens, providing eggs for daily sustenance. Cats, in turn, were beginning to appear in the region at that time, brought by merchant ships from North Africa, where they were already domesticated by the Egyptians, and their main function was to hunt the rats that infested the grain stores. The falsies led to the heart of the residence, the atrium. This was the central space of the house and functioned as a meeting point for family and social life. The atrium was a large, partially covered hall with a rectangular opening in the ceiling called the compluvium. Through this opening entered sunlight, fresh air, and on rainy days, water that fell into a shallow pool in the center of the floor called the impluvium. This water was channeled to an underground cistern and used for domestic supply. A small nearby well allowed it to be drawn when necessary. It was there that the pater familias, the male head of the household, received his clients and visitors every morning, conducting business and exercising his authority. It was also in the atrium that the larium was located, a small altar dedicated to the lares, the protective deities of the family. Small sacrifices and prayers were offered to them daily. Next to the lares, there was often a wooden or bronze chest where the family kept their most valuable possessions, such as coins, jewels, and documents. On each side of the atrium, smaller rooms called cubicles opened up, which served as bedrooms. These rooms were surprisingly small. The German writer Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, upon visiting the ruins of Pompeii centuries later, was so impressed by their small dimensions that he described them as doll houses. The furniture was very simple, often limited to a wooden bed whose frame was made of braided ropes. Mattresses were made of wool or straw. The ceiling near the bed was often lowered, creating a kind of niche. There were no wardrobes as we know them today. Clothes and personal belongings were kept in wooden chests or hung on hooks fixed to the wall. At the far end of the atrium was the tablinum, a room that served as an office and reception area for the homeowner. Separated from the riem by a curtain or wooden screen, business matters were discussed there. Documents written on wax tablets, the primary writing medium used in Roman daily life, were kept there. Writing on the wax tablets involved the use of a stylus, a pointed device constructed from either metal or bone. To erase, they simply smoothed the wax with the opposite end of the stylus. This was the most common form of written communication in daily life, used for personal letters, business notes, and even children's schoolwork. But communication in Pompeii went far beyond wax tablets. The city walls were veritable murals of public expression. Archaeologists have discovered more than 11,000 biograffiti scattered throughout Pompeii, scribbled or painted on the walls of houses, taverns, baths, and public buildings. There was everything. Election advertisements, soliciting votes for candidates, announcements of gladiatorial shows, declarations of love, poems, jokes, complaints from dissatisfied customers, and even verses from authors like Virgil and Ovid. In ancient Rome, writing on walls was not considered a crime or vandalism. It was simply an everyday practice of communication. In a sense, the graffiti of Pompeii functioned as an early version of social networks, where people from all walks of life, including slaves, merchants, and children, left their marks, responded to previous messages, and engaged in public debates, literally writing on a friend's wall. Crossing the tablinum, or using a side corridor called the andron, one reached the peristyle, a garden courtyard surrounded by columns, which represented the influence of Greek culture on the Romans. The peristyle was a refuge within the house, an open-air garden with plants, flowers, shrubs, fountains, and, in wealthier residences, statues of deities. The sound of running water mingled with the scent of flowers, creating a tranquil atmosphere that contrasted with the hustle and bustle of the streets outside. It was also in the peristyle and garden that the household animals, especially dogs and birds, roamed freely. Around the peristyle were the most refined rooms. The triclinium, the dining room, was one of the most important spaces. Its name comes from the 3 inclined couches, arranged in the shape of a ured. Romans did not eat sitting in chairs. They reclined on these couches, supported on their left elbow, while with their right hand they brought food to their mouths. Dishes were served by slaves in a ritualistic sequence. The position of each diner on the couches indicated their social prestige. And during elaborate banquets, the meal could last several hours. The diet in a house in Pompeii was varied, yet very different from modern eating habits. The main meal took place in the late afternoon, between 4 and 6 p.m. In the morning and at midday, people ate little, often just bread with olives or cheese. The basis of the cuisine consisted of cereals, legumes, olives, cheeses, fish, and meat from locally raised animals. Garum, a type of garum, seasoned practically all dishes. Accompanied by aromatic herbs such as coriander and cumin, olive oil was ubiquitous. Curiously, many foods that we now associate with Italian cuisine did not exist at that time. There were no tomatoes, potatoes, corn, peppers, rice, or sugar. The kitchen was a small, functional room. It had a raised masonry stove where cooking was done over embers, using ceramic and bronze pots, grills, cauldrons, and wooden spoons. Amphorae of different sizes stored olive oil, wine, garum, and grains. There was no refrigeration, which required daily purchases of fresh food from forum shops, markets, or street vendors. Tableware varied according to the family's wealth, ranging from simple ceramic bowls to blown glass goblets and bronze silverware. Food preparation was entirely the responsibility of the slaves. It is impossible to talk about life inside a house in Pompeii without addressing the role of slaves. They were an integral part of the domestic structure and performed all tasks, from cooking and cleaning to childcare, textile production, water transport, and even specialized services such as education and medicine. In the residences of the elite, there could be dozens. Slaves did not have their own quarters. They slept in the corridors, in the kitchen, in the storerooms, or even on the floor in front of their master's bedroom door. During the day, they circulated throughout the house, performing their duties. The interior walls were probably the most impressive visual element of the residence. Almost all rooms were decorated with elaborate frescoes that covered from floor to ceiling. This practice was not exclusive to wealthy families. All social classes that owned a dome sought to decorate their homes according to their means. The Pompeian style, predominant at the time of the eruption, combined grandiose mythological scenes with illusionistic architectural compositions that visually expanded the spaces. The floors received equally careful treatment, paved with geometric or figurative mosaics. The most famous is that of the House of the Faun, which depicts the Battle of Issus between Alexander the Great and the Persian king Darius I, composed of millions of small pieces called tessellations. Among the everyday objects found in the excavations, ceramic and bronze oil lamps stand out. These were small oil lamps used to illuminate rooms at night. Polished bronze mirrors, bone combs, glass perfume bottles, sewing needles, dice for games, and even children's toys made of ceramic and wood were recovered from the ashes. These objects reveal a domestic life rich in detail and much closer to modern habits than one might suppose. The lives of women inside the domos were active. Contrary to what's often imagined, Roman women weren't confined to specific rooms within the household. They moved freely throughout the house, supervised slaves, cared for the education of their children, and participated in domestic cults. In some cases, they managed their own businesses located on the facade of the residence. Children from wealthy families received an education at home, taught by cultured slaves of Greek origin who taught reading, writing, arithmetic, and philosophy. In less fortunate families, they attended simple urban schools, where they learned the basics using the same wax tablets employed by adults. Some more sophisticated houses had a balneum, a small private bath, and certain residences had hypocustus heating, in which hot air circulated under the raised floor. Latrines existed inside some domes, usually near the kitchen, to take advantage of the same drainage system, although they were extremely simple rooms. At nightfall, the house plunged into a darkness, broken only by the flickering light of the oil lamps. The silence was broken by the sounds of the street, the crackling of the fire, and the murmurs of nightly prayers before the larium. Outside, the city also slept. Although the Thermopolia, a kind of street food stall that sold hot food, might still be serving their last customers. According to historical records and available archaeological evidence, this was life inside a house in Pompeii, an existence that blended simplicity and sophistication, religiosity and pragmatism, social hierarchy and family intimacy. People who, on a seemingly ordinary morning in the year 79 AD, saw the sky darken and felt the earth tremble beneath their feet. Vesuvius awoke that day with a fury that no one could have predicted. A column of ash, gases, and pumice rose to over 30 kilometers in height before collapsing upon the city like a fiery avalanche. In a few hours, all life in Pompeii was silenced. Houses were swallowed up, gardens were buried. The frescoes depicting gods and heroes were covered by a gray shroud and remained untouched for almost 1,700 years. It was only from 1748 onwards that systematic excavations began to reveal what the eruption had preserved. In the 19th century, the Italian archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli developed a technique of injecting liquid plaster into the empty spaces left by decomposing bodies under solidified ash, revealing the positions in which the victims lay in their final moments. One of the best-known molds is that of a dog, still with its collar on, huddled on the ground, trying to protect itself from the ash that was falling incessantly. Pompeii is not just an archaeological site, it is a portal to the past. Each excavated dome reveals new details about how ordinary Romans possibly lived, those who were neither emperors nor generals, but rather merchants, artisans, fathers and mothers, who sought to make the best possible living in a provincial city of the Roman Empire. Today, thanks to artificial intelligence technology and digital reconstruction, it is possible to simulate what these environments might have been like before the catastrophe. To imagine the colors of the frescoes, the light entering through the compluvium, the water sparkling in the impluvium, the peristyle garden, a dog resting in the shade of the columns, and the aroma of food being prepared in the kitchen. It's an experience that, even as an approximation, connects the present to the past in an engaging and profound way. Pompeii continues to surprise. Recent excavations have revealed new houses, new frescoes, and new objects that constantly expand our knowledge of daily life in ancient Rome. And with each new discovery, the world remembers that beneath the ashes of Vesuvius lies much more than ruins. There are stories of real lives that deserve to be told and preserved for future generations.